Okay, Max, thank you for having accepted this interview. So, there are some questions I would like to pose about Wasabi. In particular, as I told you some minutes ago, there are some people who are concerned about the chain analysis activity on UTXO that is going to be coinjoined. So can you tell us something about this? What is your point of view, etc.?
So a CoinJoin is a collaborative Bitcoin transactions with many people. And so we have many users providing many inputs to a transaction and many users providing many outputs to a transaction. There is a single entity that coordinates this communication process. That's the coordinator. Right? And so this central entity and every user of this round can see exactly which inputs and which outputs are currently attempting to build this transaction together. And for whatever reason, both the coordinator and the end user can say, no, I don't want to have this certain input or this certain output of this transaction. A Bitcoin transaction is only valid if every single user, every single input to this transaction has signed it. Meaning if just one signature is missing, it's an invalid transaction that will never make it to the Bitcoin blockchain. So censorship of UTXOs is an important part of any CoinJoin system, because there might be bad actors that join a system and, for example, fail to sign a transaction, right? And now we need a central coordinator or the central coordinator to start a next round with only those participants that performed honestly, and they get invited to the next round, attempting to create a successful CoinJoin again. Now this can happen often, and ultimately sooner or later we'll have a valid transaction with all of the signatures involved. But simultaneously, this gives especially the coordinator the power to deny service to any of the inputs or any of the outputs for other reasons as well. And one of those reasons might be, for example, sanctions. Right? A input that wants to be registered is on the US sanction list, and anyone who does business with such an entity is violating these sanction rules. That might also be, for example, a child trafficking ring, for example, where some investigators have previously pointed out that, hey, this UTXO is pretty likely belonging to these criminals. And now the coordinator can say, well, okay, in that case, this coin, please cannot participate in this CoinJoin. This is something that will always be possible with any CoinJoin coordination protocol. And I'm sure that different providers of the service will have different policies for both the denial of service protections as well as the risk management of the users. And a free market hopefully establishes itself here where the end user can now choose which provider has a more sensible set of rules that I want to partake in. So I don't think that this is an issue per se. It's something that is just inherently to how the system works. It will be like this, and it's all right, I think.
So people can use, normal people can use CoinJoin feature without any issue. This is what you
Yes. And I also would like to highlight that there's no privacy downside to a coordinator working with chain surveillance firms or not. Because especially in Wasabi, the coordinator is designed so that he has zero knowledge, meaning that the customer, the client, does not reveal any sensitive information to the coordinator. Right? And therefore the coordinator, he does not have the information to spy on you, thus he cannot hand over information to someone else to spy on you. And so even if the coordinator would collaborate with a chain surveillance firm as much as possible, still the chain surveillance firm should not have more information than an outside observer has. And likewise, these chain surveillance firms are looking into CoinJoin transactions all of them, regardless of what, right, after the fact. So after users come together and successfully coordinated a round, any surveillance firm will instantly look at the transaction and try to break it. And the surveillance firm will see which inputs are registered in this round and which outputs are registered in this round. So that is fundamentally the same as if the coordinator would send, let's say, the inputs to some surveillance firm and say like, hey, these are the inputs that want to be registered. Well, the surveillance firm is going to get this information 30 seconds later with a finalized and successful CoinJoin transaction. So I don't think that there is any privacy concerns for users of a coordinator that collaborates with a surveillance firm, because fundamentally the client does not trust the backend coordinator with his personal identifying information, right? That's why this information isn't shared in the first place.
So what may happen in this case? So it may happen that some input is not included in the CoinJoin round.
Yes. So let's say you register multiple coins and one of them comes from some shady activity, let's say. The coordinator will remove this one shady coin from the input side, but you might have other inputs in this CoinJoin round as well, because not even the coordinator knows how many or which inputs come from one user. So if you register these 3 coins, nobody knows that these 3 belong to the same person. And so the coordinator cannot censor an entire user, he can only censor UTXOs. Right? So in our case here, one UTXO would get banned, and that would not be allowed to be registered even in the future with that same coordinator. But the other 2 inputs could be registered, and so are the hundreds of other inputs from other users. And then we go to output registration, where now you register outputs worth not of the full amount of money that you wanted to register, because one UTXO did not get registered. Right? So on the output side, you can only register as much Bitcoin as you registered on the input side previously. But that's basically it.
Okay, very, very clear. It's very nice to have this opportunity to discuss with you about this, because I would like to ask you personally. It's very, very interesting. Last question is if you can shortly outline the main advantages for users to use the version 2 of Wasabi, which is very different from the previous one. So what are the main advantages and features of version 2 compared to 1?
Oh yes, there's so many improvements, it's going to be difficult to list them all. The one really important thing is the minimum and maximum amount of Bitcoin that can be made private. In the Wasabi 1.0 protocol, the minimum amount was 0.1 Bitcoin. So if you had less than 0.1 Bitcoin, it was impossible for you to get privacy. The maximum was something around like 3.2, maybe 6.4 Bitcoin, which is also a rather small amount. So if you had hundreds of Bitcoin, it would also be very difficult and very expensive to get privacy here. But with Wasabi 2.0, the minimum amount is 5,000 Satoshis, right? And the maximum amount, 40,000 Bitcoin. And any value in between, regardless of what exactly that value is, can now technically regain its privacy. So that just means it's fundamentally more accessible even to people who don't have that much money, as well as to people who have a lot of money and also want to get that private. We've also made it in a way that it's much more flexible. The underlying CoinJoin protocol works with any amount, with any number of coins, and therefore the client, the actual wallet, can do a lot of things to make the experience better. So now, or in, for example, Wasabi 1.0 was always a problem, is you get a private coin of 0.1 Bitcoin. Now you want to make a payment of 0.03 Bitcoin, and you get your 0.07 Bitcoin change back. But that 0.07 Bitcoin is below the 0.1 minimum denomination, right? So your non-private change output cannot easily improve its privacy by participating in the next round of CoinJoin. You would have to consolidate multiple coins, for example. But with 2.0, that's no longer a requirement, because the minimum has been decreased substantially. So you can start CoinJoining with any amount of money, and after you have only private outputs and you make a payment, In this payment, you get a non-private change output, but regardless what the value of this change output is, it can get back on the input side of a coin join, where it then increases its privacy in the next round. So that just means the user experience is way simpler than with 1.0, because it works better and cheaper and faster, and so we just put a bunch of the complexities under the hood. In Wasabi 2.0, things are much more automated now. Regardless of how much money you receive, right after it gets confirmed, we will start the coin join process to make sure that the money that you've received will be made private. And then you will see 100% privacy level, and you just make your payments. Right? So it's receiving money, it's waiting, and then it's spending the money. And that's all that is needed to use Bitcoin privately nowadays.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you very much for your help. It would be nice for me to discuss with my audience about what you just told us. Thank you again for your collaboration.
Yes, thank you.